ahead to round two of the Trail Survey program. So if you are new here, the Trail Survey program runs from April 1st to September 30th. So we are currently in kind of like our phase two of the Trail Survey program. We do it in three phases because species change throughout the entire summer. Sometimes they change what they look like, or maybe they're early emergent, then they die back, and then things don't appear until later. So that's why we're in now round two, June and July. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to give a little bit of a brief background for those that don't know. The Finger Lakes Institute is where the Finger Lakes Prism and myself, that's where we're housed at Hobart and William Smith College. And the main mission of the Finger Lakes Institute is to translate knowledge and research about the Finger Lakes watershed into collaborative action. They have four specific program areas, one of which is invasive species, so that's where we fall in. But they also do contaminants, nutrients, and watershed management in addition to that invasive species component. So they have a lot going on, and we're really lucky to be a part of that organization. But that's where we're housed. We're right there in that house. If you ever are driving through Geneva and you see that, that's where we are. But I am specifically part of the Finger Lakes Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management, otherwise known as the Finger Lakes PRISM, and not PRISM. I get that a lot. I say, "Oh, I work with the PRISM," and then they're like, "You work in a prison?" Nope, I do not. It's like the little glass thing that shoots rainbows everywhere. But we are a network of state, federal, local agencies, NGOs, and other stakeholders, and we support a diverse and comprehensive approach to invasive species management. So we allow our partners to share and leverage the limited resources that there are in New York State when it comes to invasive species. We are funded through the New York State Environmental Protection Fund, which is administered by the New York State DEC. And our main mission is to reduce the introduction, spread, and impact of invasive species within the Finger Lakes Prism region through coordinated education, detection, prevention, and control measures. So that's kind of the big broad picture of what the Prism does. Of course, there's more specific spots, one of them being the citizen science programs and the trail survey program that you are here for. But that's the overall picture of the Prism if you are new here and this is your first interaction with us. Gonna go right through this really quickly. What's an invasive species? An invasive species is one that is non-native to the ecosystem, and the introduction of the species could cause or is likely to cause harm to the economy, environment, or human health. The invasion curve I like to show in all of my presentations. I'm not going to go too much into it because I feel like most people here probably have seen this presentation before, but just remember the invasion curve. It's really important to know where certain species are in the invasion curve so you know what might be happening to manage them. Specifically for the trail survey program, why are we doing trail survey? So trails are areas that are frequently disturbed, and if you're part of this program, you probably are somebody who likes to hike, likes to go on walks, likes to go outside. Trails are frequently disturbed by people that, are just going on a walk. There's a lot of human foot traffic and there's trail clearing, so it's just a disturbed space. The edges of forests also have different environmental conditions that are more suitable to invasive species. So at the edge of a forest, potentially, next to a field or a housing development or a town, there could be a warmer temperature, lower moisture, just different conditions than you might see in the deeper forest where there's more of an active ecosystem going on, that is more, eastern hardwood forest-esque and not so much what you see in a development. But yeah, early detection is going to be more likely at a trail. So if you're walking along, it's a lot more likely that you're going to catch invasive species along the trail edge than you scanning into the woods like 100 feet away from you and seeing, "I think that's like garlic mustard over there, maybe." It's just a lot easier to see it if you're walking right alongside the trail and you just look over and you're like, "Oh, there's some Japanese knotweed right next to me. That's great." But it's just easier to detect species alongside trails. Trails also generate good spatial data on where invasive species are spreading because it is a frequently traveled area and it is, a lot more people are going through that space. It gives us a good idea of potentially where an invasive species is going within the area as opposed to saying, "Okay, we're gonna send you all into the woods on a backcountry trip and tell us what you find." The trail survey gives good spatial data so that it's easier for us to kind of hone in on where certain populations might be. But trails are just a really important space to survey. We also want to keep the trails clean and we want to protect them from the invasive species so we can continue to enjoy the native species that are in the area. I am a big spring ephemeral person, so I love looking for those on trails whenever I'm out walking. So it's just, we want to make sure that we're keeping the invasive species away. So that's why we're doing this. That's why you're here. And I am very glad you are. But the Trail Survey program, if you're not familiar, anybody can participate. All you have to do is have a phone, have a tablet, have a computer, just have a smart device. That's all you need to have. We have in-person workshops across the region and 3 virtual trainings. This is one of those virtual trainings. This is number 2. We had one in April, but now we're having one in June, and then we have one at the tail end of July to pick up on those extra species we're going to be adding at the end. It might be a little hard to see just for the size of the screen, but if you haven't already, I encourage you to sign up for in-person workshops. It's just a really good opportunity for you to get in a space that you're with people that want to do the same thing as you. Everybody's there to learn, and you get to interact with myself and ask questions and be there to actually experience what it's like to survey in a larger group. It's just a really wonderful collaborative space, and you get introduced to different partner organizations as well. We partner with people for every single one of these workshops, so we never are doing it alone. It's a really good opportunity for you to meet with other orgs, see what's going on with them, and engage with their activities as well. And they're a point person because the Finger Lakes Prism, we're located in Geneva, and we have a 17 county region, and I cannot clone myself to be in every single county all the time. So having our partner organizations kind of gives you maybe a point person within your area of like, hey, where should I go survey on your property? Do you have a preserve that I could go walk around on that has some good trails to look for stuff for the trail survey? So it's just a good opportunity for you to engage with local organizations in your area as well. But the data is collected through that smart device that you would have. So you're asked to survey for invasive species that appear at different times throughout the season. We already just went through our April and May early emergent species, which I'm going to share a little bit of findings from that. We are going to be, as of right after this training, officially within our June and July mid-season species. As soon as the training is over and tomorrow, I'm going to be updating and sending out everything so people know to update their surveys. And then August and September are the late emergent species. So those are the ones that might be tail end, might be more prevalent at the end of the season. Those are the ones we're going to be looking for. Whenever you're surveying, I always just want to say, please do not go off trail. This is slightly different than maybe our Hemlock Woolly Adelgid survey program if you participated in that. But in the summertime, especially whenever you're doing a trail survey where you're actually looking for invasive species, if you are going off trail and deeper into the woods, then you are potentially picking up those species and spreading them further into the woods. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to spread these species further because typically, if they're alongside a trail, that might be the first place they are, and they might not have penetrated into the deeper woods yet. So by us surveying along the trail, we can hopefully detect those populations before they get deeper into the forest. So, long story short, do not go off the trail for the trail survey. Please stay on the trail. You can kind of like lean over and look and see if you can see something a little further, but generally just try to stay on trail. You're going to head down the trail and you're going to look for species that are in the season that we're asking you to look for. So you'll see that on the survey 123. We don't give you an option to look for other species that we don't have on the list. Whenever you click the drop down, it's just going to be the ones that we are asking you to look for. But you're just looking for those species that we're asking you to find. You're going to take a point for each species that you come across. So if you have encountered a monoculture, you're going to take a point for every few hundred feet from the beginning to the end of the species distribution. So if you see something like Japanese stiltgrass, where it's just a blanket of stiltgrass alongside the trail, you would take a point, you kind of maybe walk a couple minutes, a couple feet, you take another point, and then you go until the end. You could put it in the comment section too, say, hey, this is a monoculture, and I listed it in the survey, but just letting you know from point A to point B, I was taking survey points so you know how big the population is. That's generally what we're asking from you. It doesn't have to be super duper measured, even though I put a tape measure in here just because I liked the photo. It doesn't have to be precise. It just can be a rough estimate of how you want to survey alongside the trail. All data is good data to me. I will take absolutely any data that you collect on these different species. My cat just jumped up on the computer. Um, but just make sure that you are trying to detect all of those species. I do want to mention that if you find an invasive species that is not listed on our search, so if we're not asking you to look for it, you can still document that species. We partner with IMAP Invasives, and all of the data that is uploaded from this survey goes directly to IMAP Invasive. So I am in close contact with them and I give them our data sets. So all of this eventually goes to IMAP, which is the Greater New York State tool for invasive species. If you do detect a species that's not on the list and you want to report it, I highly encourage you to report it to IMAP Invasives, which if you want to know more about that, you can send me an email or just visit their website. They're also really great people, so they'll be pretty responsive to you if you reach out to them. Species distribution. We are asking you to choose one of these five, for what the distribution of the species might be. Every species is a plant species except for the spotted lanternfly. That is the only one that is not a plant, so it's kind of just an exception for how you classify this for the spotted lanternfly. But for species distribution, we are asking you to look to either classify it as trace, sparse, dense, a monoculture, or linearly scattered. So that would be plants that are kind of in a line shape alongside the trail. So if you're on the trail and you're noticing the species is just following that trail path and it maybe isn't just like there and a little further into the woods, it is actively following the trail like it's part of the trail. That's what it would be if it's linearly scattered. If you survey, you're also allowed to survey offside of trails. Like if you have a property, if you have an area that you want to go to that doesn't necessarily have a trail and it's like your own personal area, you're more than welcome to survey for that. Any detection is a good detection for me if it's a positive ID because it just helps us understand the distribution of a lot of these species, especially if it's an early detect, rapid respond species. That's something that we would really want to know if it's cropping up in different areas. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just a trail. It's almost typically going to be a trail. But if you see something in your yard that's like, hey, this really shouldn't be here, it's also good for us to know. So I encourage surveying anywhere, anytime. How is the season going? So, if you have been participating so far, thank you so much. I'm really glad that you've been participating. I wanted to kind of just note what species have been found so far in regards to the Trail Survey Program. You can see Multiflora rose and honeysuckle are our big ones. So, Multiflora is 34 and honeysuckle is 42% of detections. So, they are unfortunately in a lot of different spaces. We've also had some Tree of Heaven detections. Tree of Heaven is actually the host plant for spotted lanternfly. So by there being Tree of Heaven, it's a better likelihood that we might see spotted lanternfly there at some point in time. So recording Tree of Heaven, even though it is a tier 4 species, which means it is it's kind of here to stay, but we're just trying to manage it where we can. It is still really important for us to know. We also saw some beech leaf disease, some Japanese barberry, some knotweed as well, lesser celandine, and yellow flag iris. So a lot of species were detected for that first round, and it's only going to increase, but I wanted to mention this. The unconfirmed means that I just haven't had the chance to go through all of the data yet for the first 2 months, so I'm saying it is unconfirmed just because some detections might not be correct detections. I always go through and check the data and make sure that you guys are recording the correct species. But for the most part, everybody's been really good. I've gone through most of it, and the species are pretty on point. So everybody's doing wonderful. This is just a little map of where people have been surveying this season. You can see, honestly, it's pretty well spread out. A little bit of a hotspot in Rochester, so shout out to my Rochester folks. But we do have a lot of points being taken in other areas, even a little over in some other regions, which is cool to see. And like I said, all this goes to IMAP, so our partners at the other prisms are going to be able to view this data as well. But yeah, we've got a lot of detections across Finger Lakes region. I would love to keep adding points and adding detections to this. Not saying I want invasive species detections, because I don't want to find invasive species, But I would love to see people continuing to survey and participate in this program so we get a better idea of what's going on in our region in regards to some of these species we're looking for. So again, thank you if you've been participating, but also thanks if this is your first one and you're wanting to get started, because that's also important as well. Now we're going to get into our mid-season species. So some of these are going to be the same. We have five consistent ones that are carried through the entirety of the program, which they're the first five that I'm going to go through, but these are the June and July species. So, Japanese knotweed, I feel like almost everybody knows the Japanese knotweed, but this is one of our species that we're asking for continuously. It is found along edges of waterways and roads. It has really dense thickets that exclude native vegetation, and it threatens infrastructure. It grows through concrete and it increases erosion, which is kind of wild. It's like just grows right into the concrete. It spreads through seeds, rhizomes, and stem fragments. So really, if you break a piece off, it could reroot somewhere. The identification, it has alternate leaves that are really broad and pointed tips and flat or heart-shaped bases. So you can see that upper picture right there is a pretty good one of what the Japanese knotweed looks like. It has a hollow bamboo-like stem with reddish splotches and long white flowers. So you can see both of these descriptions in the photos above. And I also do want to mention we will have species resources available for you online. And we also have our field guide. So if you're having any problems with identification at any point in time, you can always go to our website. And I also would be happy to send it to you in an email as well. But all of the species tips and tricks on how to identify will be on our website, as well as this presentation and this recording uploaded to YouTube. Spotted lanternfly. We are looking for spotted lanternfly throughout the entire season. It goes through different stages. There is actually a population on campus that is currently in the black instar nymph stage. So it is that black bug in the right corner, like the rightest of right corners. That's what the black instar stage looks like. It is kind of tick size, so if you looked at it and you just kind of glanced, you might think it's a tick, but it's actually the spotted lanternfly nymph. It then goes into the red instar stage and then the actual lanternfly looking stage that you're probably more familiar with before that bug lays the eggs and continues the cycle again. It was first introduced to Pennsylvania in 2014 and it made it up here in 2020. So the host plants include Tree of Heaven, like I had mentioned earlier, grapevine, hops, maple, walnut, and fruit trees. So it really likes to go after all of our fun drinks that we have up here in New York and that we're known for. So that's not a good time. Its feeding behavior weakens the host plant, so it's a sap sucker, so it sucks the sap and drains them of resources. That's what it does to the plant. It is a huge threat to agriculture and especially the grape industry. So this is one of our early detection rapid response species. It is in the Finger Lakes region. However, it is still, we're looking for new populations. We're looking for where it's spreading so we can understand the distribution. So this one is really important for you all to help us in identifying. The identification for this is the egg masses are smooth with a brown, waxy appearance, and the nymphs could be black with white spots, and that could turn red before the adult stage. Once they turn red, they are a little bigger, which you can see in that photo, and they go into the typical lanternfly stage that you all are probably pretty familiar with. Right now, like I said, you're probably going to see that black instar, then you're going to see that red instar, and at the end of July, you're probably going to see adults starting to crop up in different areas. Tree of Heaven. Again, I'm really emphasizing this is the preferred host for spotted lanternfly because I just want to let you know it's really important to detect it. But it is found in disturbed sites in urban and forested areas. It reproduces prolifically by seed and root suckers. So I like to say the Tree of Heaven is like a hydra from Greek mythology. It's kind of like you cut its head off and it just sprouts more. So the effective treatment for Tree of Heaven is typically a hack and squirt herbicide or just generally cutting it down and just completely cropping it is not going to help. It's spreading from those roots. It quickly outcompetes native plants and exudes allopathic chemicals from the roots to prohibit the growth of other plants. So black walnuts do this too, which is a really interesting fact, but the Tree of Heaven does outcompete a lot of different species in more ways than just crowding them out. It actually is actively making the ground unfavorable for those species. The identification for Tree of Heaven, it has smooth cantaloupe-like bark. It has compound leaves with opposite leaflets that have a characteristic small knob at the base, so it's those thumbs that you can see in that bottom photo. And it has a rancid peanut butter smell, which I didn't believe people until like they were saying it smells like rotten peanut butter. I was like, it can't smell like rotten peanut butter. That's just a weird smell. And then I smelled it, and it was my first experience, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're so right." It stinks, and it gets your hands smelly too. But it has that smell whenever the leaves are crushed, especially the new growth. So, Tree of Heaven, be on the lookout for it. The golden oyster mushroom is one that we don't have in the Finger Lakes region yet, and there's very limited knowledge about the species. So, my information that I have on the website currently is a scientific article that I actually found really cool about the golden oyster mushroom, but it is a popular mushroom to cultivate through purchased grow kits. I'm sure you've heard of oyster mushrooms. This is an invasive golden oyster. It's theorized to have escaped from cultivation into the local habitats. So from those grow kits, they think it got out based on that. And it outcompetes the native fungi. So it kind of, you can see in that one photo, it really creates like a monoculture of golden oysters in an area. And outcompetes are native fungi. There's a ton of really, really interesting native fungi that serve multiple different purposes. So if that fungi is outcompeted, then it throws off the decomposition system in the forest. So it's just really not the best, mushroom to have in the woods, even though it does taste good. So technically, as long as you're 100% certain on your mushroom identification, it is edible because it escaped through those grow kits, but always be positive with your ID before you ever consume anything that you foraged. But the identification for the golden oyster mushroom is bright yellow to golden brown cap with white gills and a depressed center. The stems are noticeably curved or bent. But just be on the lookout for golden oyster. Again, it hasn't been found in the Finger Lakes region yet, so if you find it, it's going to be like, whoa, you found it. That's cool, but also sucks, but cool that you'd be the first one to find it. Not that we want to find it. Beach leaf disease. This is the last one. I should mention that the previous ones that I've talked about have been ones that we're asking you to look for continuously throughout the season. The beach leaf disease it's caused by an invasive nematode. It harms both American and ornamental beech trees, which they're already under pressure from beech bark disease. So this is just adding another issue to their pot. But it's caused, like I said, by the microscopic nematode that induces malformations within the leaves when it's infested. A lot is still unknown about the cause and spread of it. It's being actively researched, but they just don't know too much about the cause and spread. Aside from it being from that nematode that infects the leaves, the characteristics of the identification would be dark striping and curling of the leaves. So if you just looked at a beech leaf and saw that striping within those different veins of the leaf, that's how you're going to be able to tell it's beech leaf disease. So just be on the lookout for this one. It is, for me at least, it's one of those invasives that you learn it and you can't really unsee it. And I see it a ton now whenever I'm out hiking, which is obviously not great, but it's one that once you kind of get the identification down, you're going to see it in a lot of different places, unfortunately. All right, now we are into the species that are new. So if you have been following along and saying, I already knew all this, I've been doing this since April, this is new. So this is wild parsnip. It is found along roadsides, fields, meadows, trails, and disturbed areas. It outcompetes native meadow plants and can cause severe skin burns when the sap contacts the skin and it is exposed to sunlight. It spreads by seed, and each plant can produce hundreds to thousands of seeds, so it's just a crazy number. It is a tall plant with grooved green stems. It has compound leaves with toothed leaflets. It has flat-topped clusters of small yellow flowers, and they're kind of like in an umbrella, like a Queen Anne's lace. And it has a thick taproot similar to the cultivated parsnip. So this is a new one that we're asking you to look for. It is one that I haven't seen too much or interacted with a ton, so I'm going to be curious to see what the results are on this front. Swallowwort. This is one that I feel like a lot of people know. We are asking you to look for both types of invasive swallowworts, but swallowworts are found in a wide range of habitats, including roadsides, forest edges, wetlands, and more. The seeds are distributed by the wind dispersal, so if they get carried in the wind, it outcompetes native plant species, specifically milkweed. So this one is one that is known to just be a huge issue for butterflies, and it kills the butterfly larva if they do put their eggs on the swallowwort. So just not a good plant for our pollinators. The identification is it's an herbaceous vine that grows upright or twines up to 6.5 feet. So that is taller than me, and that's crazy. Not that it's taller than me, it's really not hard to do, but it's crazy that it gets to 6.5 feet. It has slender green stems with a milky sap, so if you break it, it has that milky sap. The leaves are opposite or whorled and elliptic to ovate with pointed tips. So you can kind of see that in the bottom right corner of the pictures that we have, those different, how you can look at those leaves and see the different characteristics. It has small star-like flowers that are maroon to purple and five-petaled. So just in general, if you see the swallowwort species, we're asking you to look for it. We'll report it. Japanese silkgrass. So Japanese silkgrass is one that I have seen frequently in forested areas. It spreads through seeds, and a single plant of the Japanese silkgrass can produce 100 to 1,000 seeds, which is crazy if you think of how small they actually are. And these seeds can remain viable for 10 years. So it is a very effective invader in what it does. It is found in moist soils of the forest floors, floodplains, fields, and disturbed areas like roadsides. So it likes that disturbance again of, typical to where trails are. It outcompetes and replaces native vegetation, and it expresses biochemical compounds that inhibit the growth of native plants and soil fungi. So again, another one that is excluding those biochemical compounds, which is just, it's really interesting, the science behind all this stuff. I love it, but it's just neat to see how things interact, while unfortunate. The identification for the Japanese silkgrass is that it's a grass that forms dense carpets, and it has smooth alternate leaves with a silvery stripe down the center. So that silvery stripe is going to be the best way that I'm going to be able to identify it. So if you're taking a photo of something that you think might be Japanese silkgrass, getting that silvery mid vein is going to be that best way that I can confidently say, yes, you found Japanese silkgrass. And it's probably the best way you confidently can say that you found it as well. The last one that I'm going to be talking about, that's a new species we're asking folks to look for, is mile a minute. There are only two known populations in the Finger Lakes region. It is found in areas with high moisture and full sunlight, and it grows up to 6 inches a day, which is crazy for a plant. That's why it's called mile a minute, because it grows extremely fast. It can crowd out the native species and is just generally not a good species, and we do not want to see it much more up here than it's already just known to populations. The identification for a mile a minute is triangular bright green leaves. They have hooked barbs on the stem, so you can kind of see the bottom picture of those hooked barbs. It has inconspicuous pale green flowers, and the fruit clusters turn from pale green to a bright blue. It has a round leaf-like structure along the stem, and that's called Ochrea, I believe. I am not entirely confident on that pronunciation, but that is how it's spelled, which is in the presentation. But mile minute is something that is it's an early detection rapid response for us. So if somebody finds mile minute within the trail survey program, I'm going to be letting our terrestrial program manager know, and her team's going to be going out there to confirm the population and see what needs to be done about it. We did some manual removal of mile a minute last year in partnership with the Western New York Prism, and it's just a species that we really would love for you guys to be on the lookout for pretty actively, as well as all these other species, because there is a reason that we have selected these for you to be looking for. It's that we really want to know about these specific ones so we can have some management and have a better idea of what's going on in our region. This is one that I shared last time, but I just want to share it again. So this is how to take identifiable photos of plants, and it is linked in our website, but I'm just going to talk about what I need to see when it comes to confirming detections. because, like I said, all of the data goes to IMAP invasives. If I can't confirm the detection, then unfortunately, even if it was that species, it's not going to be able to get recorded because a professional has to confirm those detections and want to have it be an actual confirmed detection in IMAP invasives. So, how to make sure that I can confirm the detection on my end, as well as my other folks that are helping me with this, is taking really good identifiable photos. We allow you to submit more than one, so it's not limited. You want to try to narrow down the classification. You can take an overall picture. For me, leaves and if there's berries or flowers, that is a great way for me to be able to identify if there's fruit on it. That's a good way. Any visible roots. You don't necessarily have to take all of these pictures. If you kind of take like a back shot picture, if this is the big picture, and then you go in and you get maybe like a leaf and a flower, and maybe there's a berry or something. Actually, well, berries and flowers will not be at the same time, but in general, you get my request. I big picture shot and then a couple smaller identifying characteristics. You can go back in the presentation how we're listing how to identify the species. That's generally a good frame line to follow. So I'm going to go back to mile a minute. For example, if you thought you found mile a minute, I would want a picture of the leaves. I'd want to see those triangular leaves. I would want to see that ochrea along the stem. That would be really helpful. And I would want to see any fruit clusters or flowers that were on it, as well as if you wanted to, you could take pictures of the barbs. But all of the stuff that we're listing for the identification, that's how we're going to be able to confirm it through a photo. So just taking good identifiable photos is really helpful. These are just some plan diagrams. This is actually taken directly from our field guide, which is available online. If you want to download it as a PDF, you can find the Finger Lakes field guide that we created. But this is just helping you to understand better about the leaf shapes and leaf arrangements. So you know, maybe whenever I was speaking, you're like, what the heck is whorled? Whenever you look at the leaf arrangements, whorled means it has a stem and then it goes around that stem. It's not going to be alternating up or being opposite. It's going to be whirled around. So I just always like throwing these plant diagrams in so that maybe whenever you're going back through or you're out in the field, you can be like, oh, Japanese knotweed has those heart-shaped leaves that look like a heart. So I am a little more confident now that I have found Japanese knotweed and not some other plant. So I just always like sharing the plant diagrams. This is for the folks that if you do not already have Survey 123 downloaded on your phone and you do not have the Trail Survey 2026 version downloaded, this is how you do it. All you do is go to ArcGIS Survey 123. You can download that on your App Store. Then you click continue without signing in. You don't need to have an ArcGIS account. I don't want to have that barrier for people. So just click continue without signing in, and then you could just scan this QR code. If you're having any issues with scanning the QR code, I am more than happy to send it to you in an email, and all you have to do is click on it. It's going to automatically download. And same thing with this QR code. If you just scan the QR code and you already have Survey 123 on your phone, it's going to automatically just, bam, put that survey right on your phone, and you are rock and roll and good to go. Make sure you have your location services turned on whenever you're surveying. That just helps it to pinpoint your location because it does automatically take that, but just making sure it's all good. I'm going to move on unless anybody wants me to keep this slide up. So it's a speak now or hold your peace. Peace is held. How to fill out volunteer hours. Same deal. You're going to obviously have probably already had Survey 123 download on your phone, and the volunteer hours form is linked right here. It is the same one throughout all of our programs. So if you have participated in a program of ours before, this is the same one. I am unifying all of them under one volunteer form so that it's just easier on you all. I'm not asking you to submit volunteer hours in a million different places. It's just one spot for every program. It just asks you how long you were out and what program you were working on. For all of our surveys, what I do ask is that you put your full name If you were using a nickname and you go by that nickname, then keep using that the entire time, but try to keep your name consistent throughout all of the activities you're doing with us, just because that way it helps me whenever I'm kind of cross-referencing, because we like to reward our volunteers that have done a lot of work. We give out field guides to the folks that have been really dedicated. We give out some Prism swag. So we just want to thank you for the work you've done. And by me being able to cross-reference, that helps me to narrow down who the top volunteers are that have been doing well. Not to say, if you get out once, that is super duper helpful for me. So I want to encourage you to go out whenever you can. Just know that I really do appreciate it a ton. Species ID. I know it's hard. If you ever have any questions, you can always contact me. My contact information is right here, lwilliams@hws.edu. You also could reach out to Lydia Martin. She is not here today, but she is our terrestrial invasive species program manager. I ask her a lot of times for some plant ID tips, so you also could reach out to Lydia. Her email is lmartin@hws.edu. You can find reference material on our website under the Citizen Science tab. So if you just click on that link and go to Citizen Science, you're going to be able to find that website and you have all those reference materials. So we have this presentation will be uploaded, and I also am going to have resources for each species. This presentation will be uploaded, so I'll put this into a PowerPoint so you have these slides, but everything always goes under the Citizen Science tab. You could use Seek and iNaturalist. I will say they're better now that things have gotten leaves on them. I was originally trying to use Seek in the springtime, and it was like, I don't know what bud that is. That's a dicot. And I'm like, Seek, you've told me it's a dicot probably 20 times for many different species. It just automatically goes to dicot. But they're good to kind of just solidify if you're a little unsure and you don't know if you want to submit it or not. Using Seek is a way to just be like, okay, yep, Seek says this is what it is, so I'm going to submit it and see if the Prism approves. But that's pretty much the presentation that I have.